Hey guys, welcome back to my channel McNallie Money, home of all things stock, investment, and personal finance related. Now today we've got an interesting one for you. This was actually a viewer request or subscriber request, and the company we're talking about is Fire and Flower. So this is heavily involved with the retail space of the MJ industry here in Canada. It's very similar to High Tide, but they've definitely got some differences and a few tricks up their sleeve. So I wanted to take you through their business model. Now, in addition to that, they've also just recently reported Q4 and 2020 fiscal results, which were absolutely great, and we'll talk about that in this video as well. Now, before we get into it, please take a second to like the video. It really does help this channel grow, and it helps get this content to other people like yourself who might find value. In addition, take a second to subscribe to the channel. We're within 100 subscribers of that big 1K, 1,000 milestone. And I really want to take a second to thank each and every one of you for watching this video and supporting the channel. And as always, leave a comment in the section below on what you think of Fire and Flower, this analysis, and if you currently hold shares in this company. Now without further ado, let's roll the intro clip and get into today's video. Okay guys, so that's right. Today we're going to be talking about another small cap MJ company operating here in Canada. Now we switched it up a little bit this week. We started talking about the psychedelic medicine stocks again, but we're going back to my bread and butter here on the channel because right now these are the videos that are getting the most attention and that the viewers keep asking for. So this was another viewer request or subscriber request, and this one's really exciting. It's very similar to High Tide, which we're going to look at some of the comparisons in a second here, but Fire and Flower is really focused on the retail MJ experience here in Canada, and they do actually have some plans for international expansion as well. So to kick things off, I wanted to look at the share price. Now this is as of close on Thursday, April 29th, so it is a couple days old. You can see that day they were down 1 cent, so they landed at $1.11 Canadian. And in terms of market cap, this company is just shy of $370 million Canadian. Now you'll see again in February here, we saw strength in the entire MJ sector. So February 16th, this company actually peaked out at $1.45. Prior to that, it was trading sub $1, so in the kind of 80-cent range was kind of the low or the support point over the last 6 months. And if we zoom out to a 1 year, you can see they were trading relatively flat. So even back in May of 2020, they were in that mid 70-cent range. So they have been on a moderate uptrend. However, I still feel like this company offers tremendous upside potential. And we're going to talk about that in a little bit more detail throughout this video. Now we're going to switch things up a little bit here today. So we're actually going to talk about the numbers first. So Fire and Flower actually just reported Q4 and full 2020 fiscal earnings on April 27th. So extremely recently, and that's actually why I wanted to do this video this week and talk about this stuff while it was fresh in everybody's mind. So we're going to go through the earnings announcement here. Then we're going to talk about the business model, what differentiates them from some of the competitors in this space, and then my prediction moving forward for this stock. So hopefully you guys like the new format. Let me know in the comment section below if you prefer to talk numbers up front or at the end, but we're going to try things a little bit differently here in today's video. So these results were truly impressive. If you look down at kind of the highlights, they actually had just about $130 million in annual revenue, which was a 150% year over year increase. Quarterly revenue increased just about 160% and landed at $43.2 million. They had their second quarter of consecutive positive adjusted EBITDA, which landed at $1.5 million for fourth quarter and was also positive for the entire year overall. And we've talked about adjusted EBITDA a lot on this channel before. This metric is a little bit difficult to take at face value and to compare apples to apples in this industry. However, it is a good sign, and it's definitely encouraging that they're moving up and in the right direction, at least with their internal reporting standards. And then their Hi-Fire digital retail and analytics platform, which we're going to talk about in some detail here in this video because I truly feel this does differentiate them from some of the competitors, actually saw 110% sequential growth and produced just over $6.3 million of revenue in itself in the fiscal year. Now, a couple other things I wanted to mention here. They actually have a strong cash position of $30.6 million as of year end. Now they have done some additional raises after the fiscal year ended on January 30th, so we're going to look at those as well in a second here. Their open fields distribution business achieved 36.5% sequential quarter-over-quarter growth and actually contributed $20.3 million in revenue for fiscal 20. So they've actually got their retail store revenue, they've got their Hi-Fire digital platform revenue, and then they've also got this distribution revenue. So they do have some diversification, which again I think is great and really does differentiate this company from some of the competitors. We're going to talk about all of these again in more detail here as we move through the presentation. Same store sales for the quarter were up 37% over Q4 of 2019, and they actually closed their acquisition of Friendly Stranger Holdings Corp, which was a multi-store, multi-banner retail operator in the province of Ontario. They had 73 stores at the time, and we're going to talk about their multi-banner approach and their actual store counts here in a second, but this was encouraging. Another big development this year was the launch of their co-located MJ retail stores alongside Circle K convenience stores. And then obviously they navigated the pandemic situation, which has really been plaguing a lot of these retail companies in many industries throughout the year. Now, subsequent to quarter end, so after the year and the quarter had finished, the company completed an additional $15 million share offering at market prices. They then announced a $53 million debt to equity conversion, and they also entered into a strategic agreement with their Hi-Fire platform to actually enter the United States market. So again, that's extremely exciting. We've talked about this in a number of my videos, and I truly think that's where a lot of the potential in the MJ sector is going to be over the next couple of years. So a ton to unpack here, you guys. And the reason I thought it would be interesting to start out with the numbers is now you guys know exactly what we want to talk about in this video, and now we can go through and really add color to each one of these bullet points and have some conversation, keeping these high level numbers in the back of our mind. Now, I mentioned in the opening slide, this company is very similar to High Tide in the sense that they're both competing to be Canada's #1 retail distributor of MJ. High Tide has about 85 stores as of the time of filming this video, and I believe Fire and Flower comes in at about 80 when you add up all of their different banners into one number. So they're very similar in terms of retail footprint and number of locations, but I did want to kind of compare the market caps of these two companies. So High Tide actually comes in at 430 million versus Fire and Flower at 370. So it's about a $60 million Canadian difference, meaning Fire and Flower has a market cap that's about 16% lower than High Tide currently does. Now, the other thing that's interesting here that I wanted to compare is actually the revenue profile of these two companies. So High Tide just reported their first quarter of 2021, and they actually landed with revenues of $38.3 million for the first quarter of this year. So just about $40 million, which is very comparable if you jump back and you take a look at the fourth quarter results. So the 3-month results for Fire and Flower, which came in at $43.2 million. So the companies are very similar in terms of overall market cap, very similar in total locations, and very similar in their current revenue generation or total quarterly revenue profile. Now keep that in mind as we move through the presentation, because there are a few differences between these two companies, and there's a couple components of Fire and Flower that aren't present with High Tide and are really interesting for me. Specifically, this 20% stake that the owner of Circle K, Couchard, has actually taken in this company. So now we're going to start unpacking the Fire and Flower business model. So this is the company website here. You can see front and center is actually their Sparks Perks reward program, which we're going to look at in more detail here. Very similar look and feel to a lot of these retail-based platforms. They've got a shop section where you can go in and see their different product offerings, different verticals, and featured products. If you scroll down on this page, they've got what they refer to as the lit list. So these are their top products. You can see a wide assortment from a lot of Canada's top brands in this space. If you're not feeling the lit list, then you can actually search for products based on the feeling or the outcome or vibe that you're kind of looking for, whether it's mellow, boost, spark, rest, whatever the case is. And then finally, you can search for products by product category type. So if we actually jump into flower, for example, again, very wide product offering or product portfolio. Now, if you scroll through all the actual product offerings, at the bottom here, you can see the different brands that they carry. And we've actually talked about a lot of these on the channel, whether it's the Bang brand, Wana Gummies, Indiva, Pax, Color by WeedMD, Aurora, Foray, Edison, the list goes on and on. But that's what's really cool with this channel. You actually get to understand the industry in a very in-depth way, and you can start to see how all these companies are interrelated and cross-promote each other between their platforms. So in terms of Fire and Flower's mission statement, they've really positioned themselves as Canada's MJ shop. So they want to be the leader in this country in terms of brick and mortar MJ locations to serve our population in all of our various provinces. As one of the first countries in the world to legalize MJ use, Canadians are bringing this incredibly powerful plant into widespread acceptance. With openness, transparency, and inclusion at heart, we are proud to welcome people of all walks into our stores. And you'll really see this when we look at their store layout. They're very welcoming, they're very inviting, and they really try and educate and empower customers to make the right buying decision for their lifestyle. So moving along here, you can actually see one of their retail store locations under the Fire and Flower banner here. So again, very open, very modern, very bright. But I wanted to talk about their value proposition, specifically 3 things they call out in their most recent investor deck. And this is, in my opinion, what really starts to differentiate this company from some of the others like High Tide in the retail space. So we're going to talk about each one of these in a little bit more detail here. Number 1 is their proprietary Hi-Fire digital retail and analytics platform. Now we're going to spend a good amount of time on this, but in a nutshell, what this platform is designed to do is digitally engage customers, which will create more sticky and more loyal customers for this brand, and ultimately create more valuable customers, which will drive a higher overall customer lifetime value. They want to deliver high margin, recurring subscription revenue by using the data and analytics performed in the platform. And then finally, they want to add value through the digital platform itself. So that's going to be the first one we talk about here. The second is going to be this strategic investment. And I'm really bad at pronouncing this name. I'm going to try Aliamen Couchard. We're actually going to refer to this as Circle K moving forward in the presentation because I can't really pronounce that name very well. But they're actually looking at that opportunity for Canadian and international growth opportunities. And then finally is their strong balance sheet with necessary capital, which we just saw, their cash position and their plans to raise additional cash, and their expertise to deliver on those growth plans moving forward. So we're going to go through these in order. First is the Hi-Fire platform. So essentially what this is an app or a CRM, customer relationship management tool that this company's built out. And it's really focused on 3 things here. So drive deep engagement with both retail and vendor customers, increasing the value in the MJ supply chain. Secondly is to provide incremental high margin revenue streams through recurring software-based revenue. And then finally is to create a sustainable competitive advantage that can be leveraged for expansion into international markets. And that's really where the stickiness of those customers comes into play. So obviously it's a technology-based solution, as are many of these CRM or app type platforms. And it's really meant to serve both sides of the equation. So the retail customer themselves can benefit through this platform from things like the Sparks Perks reward program, but they also give businesses or retailers the insights to better market and position their products, cross-sell, upsell to prospective and recurring customers. So the proprietary Retail 2.0 platform provides Fire and Flower customers with a convenient, personalized, and curated shopping experience, whether online or in store. So it's really meant to streamline and smooth out that customer interaction, present them with products that they'll like and that are similar to previous purchases, very much how other retail platforms like Amazon work with their featured or top picks. On the flip side, they can leverage these powerful and predictive analytics and data to help ensure retailers have the right quantity and quality of products in their locations to meet customer demand. And this is kind of how the ecosystem works. So there's 4 different components. The Hi-Fire Reach, which connects with new and existing customers through available and approved contact methods or channels. They have the Hi-Fire One, which engages the customer in-store and online with data-enabled digital tools. So that's really the in-store and retail experience. They then have the Sparks Perks component, which is essentially a membership rewards type program. They actually just crossed 250,000 or 250,000 active users on this platform. And that really seeks to understand the consumer and personalize and recommend those products and improve the experience overall for that customer. And then finally is the Hi-Fire IQ, which is instant access to the analytics and insights for the retail operators themselves and the suppliers. So that's the back end functionality of this tool that really helps the sellers make better business decisions. So this slide here really expands on the vendor or retail side applications of this Hi-Fire platform. So the IQ, the Reach, and the One. Now we're going to go through these quickly and then we'll look at the Sparks Perks members side reward program. So the Hi-Fire IQ is the data analytics platform, which is an industry-leading real-time data analysis platform. Our live sales data, customer demographics, market trend analysis helps our partners identify opportunities. Through the data program, we help our partners understand key insights on category and product trends, as well as SKU level sales. So this really helps retailers position their products in a way that's going to meet customer demand and optimize their store sell-through and ultimately revenue. Now the Hi-Fire Reach really focuses on acquiring new customers and connecting existing customers to various brands. So it's an age-verified MJ consumer platform used in digital advertising networks that connects brands to potential customers and provides what they call path to purchase measurement for both retail and online experience. We help our partners drive customers to digital product listings, brand pages, and ensure optimized connection between ready-to-purchase customers and various brand products. So obviously a huge value add for the retailer themselves. And then the third one here is the Hi-Fire One platform, which is the digital retail platform itself. This is an industry-leading in-store or in-shop and online digital tool set for North American MJ dispensaries. Powered by data, our tools such as e-commerce click and collect, rapid delivery, in-store menus, kiosk clienteling apps provide customers and canistas, which is essentially a barista that works in one of these retail stores, with personalized shopping experience. Hi-Fire One leads to better customer engagement, higher sales, and more informed operations. So this Hi-Fire platform itself and all the various facets of it are one of the main things that I really feel differentiate this company from some of the competitors. Interestingly enough, Tilt Holdings, which was another one of my major positions, they actually had a system like this as well that was really focused on CRM and retail experience and data collection, and they've actually sold that off in the United States, citing a lot of competition in this space as the reason they wanted to exit or offload that division. And now looking at Fire & Flower's platform compared to what they had, this one really is superior and I think encompasses a lot more of the overall ecosystem and is honestly a much bigger value add overall. So the fourth piece of this is actually focused on the members or the customers themselves, and it's called the Sparks Perks program. So they've actually now surpassed 250,000 members, so 250,000 members. So continued growth from when this deck was put together. And this program actually gives members the benefits of what they call Spark Fast Lane, so click and collect checkout, home delivery, which is awesome, members only events, and exclusive promotions on their products. So this is obviously great for the customer. You can see here an example, save 25% on your next order. So it's pretty significant. There's definitely some meat to this program, but on the flip side, what it allows the retailer to actually do is collect data on the consumer, their purchasing patterns and behaviors, and that helps Fire & Flower better understand their preferences of these customers, which in turn allows better product placement, better targeted marketing campaigns, and ultimately more revenue for these retailers. And that data is exactly what feeds the Hi-Fire IQ data platform. So they actually take all of that customer data, they analyze it, they interpret it, and then they're able to give recommendations that ultimately lead to operational efficiencies and optimization. So some of the ones that they mention here are merchandise planning, inventory management, sales measurement and projection, staffing optimization, which I thought was really cool. So you can actually determine how many people you need on the floor based on some of these sales trends, customer engagement, and regulatory reporting. They use dynamic reporting, which is updated in real time. It monitors customer satisfaction through the reviews customers leave and any product return data. They generate external revenue through partnership with licensed producers, marketing, finance, and market research groups, which produce high margin revenue for Fire & Flower. So they're actually able to sell this data to other third-party companies, which drives that revenue that we saw in F20 for the company of about $6 million. And if we jump back to the earnings release, this is exactly where this money comes from. So 110% sequential quarter over quarter growth from this Hi-Fire digital analytics platform, with $6.3 million of revenue in fiscal year 20. So you can tell by that number that this platform actually does create a lot of value for these retailers, distributors, marketers, and they're willing to pay handsomely for that information. And then finally, this is a cross-border data platform, and that's where that strategic agreement with BDSA came in, and this is really going to propel them if and when they do enter the US market. So next up, we're going to talk about the Circle K strategic relationship. So Circle K is actually owned by the parent company Couche-Tard here, and they now have just under 20% equity in Fire and Flower. And we're going to take a look at that company in a second, but they actually have the right to acquire up to 50.1% or controlling interest in Fire and Flower down the road. So I definitely think this is an opportunity for this company as a potential buyout or fold into the bigger organization. So that's definitely one thing that's got me extremely bullish. And this is the second thing that I feel like Fire and Flower has over and above a lot of their retail competitors. They're backed by an absolutely massive multi-billion-dollar company with over 14,000 locations and operations in 26 countries. So when you talk about global expansion or international expansion, it really doesn't get much better than a partnership like this. Now, they've already successfully launched a pilot program where they have Fire and Flower shops right next door, or what they call co-located with Circle K convenience stores. And you can also purchase Fire and Flower gift cards within the Circle K store itself. So they're really focused on that convenience aspect, just like you'd pick up cigarettes or gum or lotteries or whatever when you stop for gas. And then you can see here they specifically call out the international expansion opportunities or possibilities from this strategic relationship or partnership. So this is actually what the setup would look like. So you can see here the Circle K convenience store, and then right next to it or adjacent is the Fire and Flower MJ shop. So very convenient again. And this article actually calls out how powerful of a partnership this is moving into US legalization and expansion. Now you can see in the article there's a couple of things worth calling out. So they talk about that rivalry with High Tide, their 80 stores versus High Tide's 85th branded retail location. They also mention Fire and Flower has now submitted an application to uplist on the NASDAQ exchange. So that's exactly what we just talked about in the MindMed video, and that's going to be a huge catalyst for this company. And the thing I really like about this article is both companies have aspirations to go beyond Canada. Now they specifically call out another agreement here with American Acres Managers with their plans to open MJ retail locations in Arizona, California, and Nevada. And then they also discuss the US being the most close or nearest term opportunity in terms of international expansion. So great that both companies are moving in this direction and they're aligned on that vision to get outside of the Canadian ecosystem or border. Now, in terms of the Circle K parent company itself, you can see this is actually a $45 billion company. So for them to acquire or take over that full 50.1% ownership of Fire and Flower would really be a drop in the bucket for this company. And that's why I think this is definitely a high probability outcome for Fire and Flower. So now that we've talked about the numbers here, we've looked at the Fire and Flower website, we've talked about some of the ways that they're trying to differentiate themselves from the traditional retail experience or operator. I wanted to take a look at their actual retail brick and mortar store location setup itself. So one thing that's different with this company is they're actually a multi-banner operator. So they've got 64 stores branded under the Fire and Flower logo, which really focuses on the mass premium MJ market. They then have their Friendly Stranger banner, which has 11 stores currently in operation, targeted at MJ enthusiasts. They've got a Happy Days banner with 6 stores in operation that again focuses on the everyday consumer, and Hotbox currently with 2 stores in operation that focus on social consumers. So these 3 are really the big retailers driving the revenue for this company, and we're going to look at a picture of each one of these stores in a second to really compare and contrast the feel of the different banners. Now, as mentioned, they've got over 80 locations and they're currently operating in Ontario, Alberta, BC, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and the Yukon, with wholesale distribution division called Open Fields, which we're going to look at in a second. So this is a photo of each of these 3 different retail stores. So you've got Fire and Flower here, which is the modern, clean, chic type of look. The Happy Days, which is kind of a more traditional hemp shop type of feel, and then the Friendly Stranger, which is kind of a blend between the two. So definitely a very different vibe when you walk into one of these three different bannered stores, but each one of them caters to a different part of the MJ market and different demographic, which I think is really cool. So a few more pieces of the puzzle here before we wrap up the presentation. Number one is this American Acres strategic agreement. So Fire and Flower has entered into a strategic agreement with this company, American Acres Managers, to license the Fire and Flower brand, operating procedures, and the Hi-Fire digital retail analytics platform, which we just looked at, in key markets across the states, including California, Arizona, and Nevada. So at the bottom here, you can see American Acres is going to acquire dispensaries in these three states, and they're going to convert them over to the Fire and Flower banner. Now, although this is just a licensing agreement, this really expands the Fire and Flower brand south of the border, and I think gives them a great entry point into the United States to really leverage the expertise that they've honed and built here in Canada. Now, another point I wanted to talk about quickly was the open fields distribution. So they're actually using Saskatchewan as a testing ground for private wholesaling and distribution, which allows for higher margin revenue opportunities through private label products. Now, this is going to drive significant additional revenue for the company. So if we jump back to the earnings report, you can see here that Open Fields is already contributing over $20 million in revenue in the past year. And that was actually 37% sequential quarter over quarter growth. So definitely a great opportunity for Fire and Flower moving forward. And if this pilot project in Saskatchewan proves to be successful, I expect they'll expand this nationwide or even North American wide. So to wrap things up, you guys, I thought this was a very fitting article from the Motley Fool. This talks about Fire and Flower being one of the best stocks currently listed on the TSX to buy under $1. Now, you've seen it run up a little bit since the time this article came out in the last couple of days here, but honestly, I couldn't agree more. So they talk about a lot of the things that we just discussed in this presentation: the digital platform, the Circle K agreement, the expansion into the United States, but their takeaway is really this: with shares trading at 2.4 times sales, I think investors are getting a lot of bang for their buck. I think Fire and Flower is the best low dollar cost stock on the entire TSX index. As such, small cap growth investors would be wise to scale into a position over time. And I honestly agree with this article and feel like that sums it up pretty nicely. This is a company that I didn't know a ton about. I'm super happy that I was referred to Fire and Flower by one of my subscribers and took some time to dig in a little deeper. I think this company's got a lot of great things going for it, and I think it really has strong potential of expanding into a global brand as countries continue to decriminalize and legalize MJ in the coming years. So for me, as someone who's trying to spread out my exposure in the MJ space, I already have a position in High Tide, and I definitely think I'm going to be adding one in Fire and Flower to go hand in hand there. And that way, ultimately, whichever company proves to be the top dog, I'm in a great position to make some money off of. Now, in terms of my targeted buy price, honestly, I don't think it makes much of a difference whether it's $1, $1.05, $1.10. I see two very probable outcomes for this company. Number one, Circle K parent company is going to exercise their option to purchase 50.1% of Fire and Flower, and they're going to pay a buyout premium for that right. So I could see that as a very realistic opportunity. Secondly, I feel they could leave it alone with that 20% stake, and they continue to organically scale this business here in Canada and in the United States. Now, one thing I will mention, margins in the retail space are definitely challenged right now because of the high level of competition. So it may take a little bit of time for this company to really start to benefit from this rapid expansion. And that's why I'm so excited that they're already generating revenue from their Hi-Fire platform and their Open Fields distribution center to offset some of those growth costs. So for me, I think this is a great stock. I'm going to be adding it to my active buy list. I'll keep you guys posted if and when I do decide to pull the trigger. As always, feel free to leave a comment in the section below on what you think of this analysis, if you're currently holding Fire and Flower, and what you think of this company moving forward. Now, please take a second to like this video. It really does help get this content to other people like yourself who might find value. If you're not already subscribed to the channel, take a second to do that as well. And as always, have a great rest of your day, and thanks so much for watching.